Smoke, flames, fire. Is there anything more primal than humanity's fear of and fascination with fire? On the one hand, it looks dope as hell in a fire pit, and it can roast a hot dog to perfection. On the other, it's a shockingly powerful murderer just waiting to escape your control and kill you and everyone you know. Humanity's relationship to fire? It's complicated. So is it any wonder that one of the Coney Island Dreamland Amusement Park's most popular attractions was entirely devoted to the dangers of fire? From opening day in 1904 until its replacement in 1906, the Fighting the Flames live fire show, which featured a tenement building bursting into flames and firefighters rushing to put it out, was one of the park's biggest draws. In this episode, we'll explore the attraction itself, why it was created and why it was retired after 2 years, and exactly why, at the beginning of the century, firefighting was considered thrilling enough to headline a theme park. So won't you meet me in Dreamland? First of all, if you are new here, the Dreamland Amusement Park, opened from 1904 to 1911, was one of the big 3 parks at Coney Island at the turn of the century and the home of some of the strangest, most wonderful, dangerous, and decidedly un-PC attractions to ever appear in a theme park ever. On this channel, I've been examining the various rides and shows at the park for over a year now. I might be a little obsessed. And if you find this interesting, please check out some of my other videos. Now let's take ourselves back in time to 1904. It is a warm day in May, and you've left the stifling confines of Manhattan's claustrophobic streets for the refreshing sea breezes of Coney Island and the brand new Dreamland Amusement Park. Just east of the streetcar stop, the crowds are gathering beneath a 75-foot-tall angel's outstretched wings. You join the throng, pay your 10-cent admission fee to the young woman wearing a graduate's mortarboard. Dreamland prided itself on being a place of education and refinement, and enter the park itself. You quickly move past Bostock's Animal Arena, the 375-foot-tall Dreamland Tower, the Carousel, and the canals of Venice. You want some real excitement, and just ahead, there it is, a massive white plaster facade decorated by a full regiment of bas-relief firemen and fire engines fighting the flames. You pass beneath the ornate archway and find an entire city scene laid out, rather similar to the one you left behind in Manhattan. And then the performance begins. The Brooklyn Daily Eagle newspaper described it as it occurred on Monday, May 16, 1904. First, there is a fireman's parade displaying the whole outfit, with 2 engines, hook and ladder truck, aerial truck and chief's wagon, and with 350 people on the street. Then a street row breaks out and everybody rushes pell-mell to see it. An alarm is sounded and the fire engines burst forth from the 2 firehouses directly opposite each other. A great building of 7 stories is ablaze. Men and women appear in the windows. The firemen go up with scaling ladders and extension ladders and make thrilling rescues. 3 or 4 people jump from the top fire escapes 80 feet or so above the ground and land safely in nets stretched for the purpose. It is so realistic that you hold your breath until it is over. So why was this so fascinating to New Yorkers that, as the Eagle reported, every performance was sold out through the summer? What was it about fire that attracted the beach-going public? Well, we're going to have to go even farther back into history for this. So you're a caveman, right? Okay, too far. Look, fire is fire, right? And it burns everything. And although it's been a mortal danger to humans since the beginning of time, there were changes occurring in Western civilization at the turn of the 20th century that made fire even more dangerous in the urban environment, and especially in New York, namely overcrowding, poverty, and the advent of high-rise tenement buildings. The combination of these factors and an urban environment still reliant on oil lanterns, candles, and gaslight meant that fires broke out more often and were more deadly than ever, often trapping multiple families on upper floors of substandard buildings. Hence the tenement building as fighting the flames centerpiece. At the same time, New York's firefighting infrastructure was in a transitional state. In the early 1800s, firefighting had been conducted by groups of civic leaders, businessmen, and political figures, according to Dr. Lynn Kelly in her book, Fighting the Flames, which I'll be referencing throughout. These higher-ups volunteered their time and energy because being part of the fire brigade was seen as a position of respect, a sort of noblesse oblige where the city's elites could roll up their sleeves and help out their community. But by the 1850s, as New York's population grew at a breakneck rate, the political culture of New York had changed to the point that these civic leaders were no longer willing to get their hands dirty in the act of putting out a conflagration. The upper class became increasingly elevated from the masses, seeing the poor members of their cities as the other half and responsible for their own needs. As a result, each city district wound up with multiple volunteer brigades made up of more rough-and-tumble members of the lower classes whose territory often overlapped. And these brigades began to compete with each other to be the first on the scene of any new fire. Not only did a fire present an opportunity to increase the prestige of the brigade, who got there first, it also offered a chance for some of the sketchier firefighters to help themselves to any valuables inside the burning home. As one critic wrote, "If there is anything in the burning building or in any of those in the vicinity to eat, drink, or smoke, even the best firemen consider that they have a perfect right to help themselves to it. In 99 cases out of 100, anything else on the premises that strikes their eye will be pocketed." It got to the point where fire volunteers would have full-on brawls with other brigades right outside the burning building that they were supposed to be saving. If you've seen the definitely worth watching Scorsese film Gangs of New York, then you know that scene in the movie, basically. It's pretty much true, right down to the apparently very common problem of fire brigades sending runners to the scene of the fire in order to hide the hydrants underneath barrels to keep other brigades from using them. So given that all of this was going on in one of the most crowded cities in the USA, fires became hugely popular and dramatic spectacles for locals to attend, place bets on which brigade would get to the conflagration first, and just generally enjoy themselves as another building full of people burned to the ground and members of fire brigades took to bare-knuckle brawling in the streets. Kinda sounds like a theme park attraction already, doesn't it? The New York volunteer system, for all its entertainment value, had broken down, and something needed to replace it. Several cities had already begun maintaining a professional fire brigade where the firefighters were actually paid for their work protecting buildings rather than just helping themselves to any spoils within. At the same time, a new invention entered the firefighting scene in the middle of the 19th century, the steam-powered fire pump. Prior to this miraculous device, the roustabout volunteer firefighters had to hand pump their engines in order to maintain enough water pressure for a steady stream to spray from the hose, which was no easy task. This led to a culture of barrel-chested volunteers who prided themselves on strength and stamina needed to keep the pump going. It was a key part of the volunteer firefighter identity. Not only that, but the act of pumping became sort of proof of firefighter virility, with the engine even being characterized as the lady of the firehouse. The steam pump changed that relationship by automating water flow through technology rather than strength. Suddenly, a key part of the volunteer firefighter identity had been stripped away. In 1865, New York City officially did away with the volunteer system and replaced it with paid firefighters using steam-powered engines. In order to emphasize this new professionalism, the city gave the new firefighters strict dress codes for their day-to-day work and expensive dress uniforms for parades where they would march an organized regiment. Quite the contrast to the chaotic individualism of the old volunteers. New York now had a trained, full-time army of firefighters using the absolute latest in firefighting methods, and even better, they were more focused on fighting fires than each other, and not nearly as likely to swipe the silverware in the houses they were supposed to be protecting. And just in time, too. As I mentioned toward the start of this section, New York's population boom, which went from 500,000 in 1850 to over 3 million in 1900, resulted in the need to house an ever-increasing population in an ever-decreasing amount of space. Enter the tenement building. High-rise structures built cheaply that could house multiple families. They quickly filled up with immigrants, many of whom were impoverished, and immoral landlords subdivided the floors to house more and more families well beyond what was considered safe or legal at the time. And well, they caught fire. Kind of a lot. In fact, the New York City government in 1885 estimated that tenement buildings were more than 7 times likelier to catch on fire than other kinds of dwellings. The height and overcrowding also made fires harder to fight in the buildings, and the subdivided floors, with entire families often living in spaces that had no direct access to stairwells or windows, made it nearly impossible to evacuate the occupants before they were overcome by smoke and flame. This tension between the best of modern firefighting capabilities, those shiny new steam engines, the impeccably uniformed professional firefighters, and the increasing dangers of urban tenements and overcrowding, were a recipe for drama and spectacle. So that was the firefighting backdrop as modern amusement culture arrived with the advent of the 20th century. The public was intensely interested in fire, both fighting it and in the destruction it was wreaking on their cities. Firefighting demonstrations began popping up at expositions and in theaters, and it only made sense that when Dreamland opened, it would incorporate the public's interest in as spectacular fashion as it could. In 1904, the Dreamland Amusement Park was on the cusp of opening, and its owner, William Reynolds, knew they needed a killer attraction to compete with the already established parks on Coney, Steeplechase and Luna. What's more, Reynolds had heard that Luna would be incorporating their own firefighting show into the 1904 season. Reynolds loved to rip off Luna Park. Luna had Shoot the Chutes, while Dreamland would have bigger Shoot the Chutes. Luna had 200,000 light bulbs, while Dreamland would have 1 million light bulbs. Luna had a 200-foot-tall illuminated tower, while Dreamland would have a 375-foot-tall illuminated tower, and so on. So naturally, Reynolds had to go bigger and better and more fiery in every way. Luna had a 4-story tenement building, so Dreamland built a 7-story tenement building. Reynolds also claimed that Fighting the Flames would feature 2,000 performers, including firefighters, actors performing on the street, horses, and of course, terrified victims trapped on the upper stories of the tenement. And when Dreamland opened its doors in May of 1904, Fighting the Flames was a blockbuster hit. Dr. Lynn Sally's excellent book, Fighting the Flames, features a description of the event culled from the pages of the Biograph Bulletin. The entertainment has all the excitement of a genuine fire. The conflagration is preceded by familiar scenes of everyday life in a busy city. Across the city's square pass trolley cars, delivery wagons, coupes, and pushcart vendors, while busy people complete the scene of life and activity in a metropolitan city. A well-equipped fire department is ready for emergency, and when the alarm is sounded that a 5-story hotel is on fire, the engines, hose wagons, water towers, hook and ladder trucks, and battalion chief's wagon crowd one another as they rush to the scene of the conflagration. What the audience sees is a raging fire with excitable people clinging to the windows, others forced to the fire escapes, where escape is cut off by the flames below. The firemen play the part of the heroes. By use of scaling ladders, while the extension ladder is being raised, the firemen mount the building floor by floor, calm the inmates, bringing some of them to the ground by means of the scaling ladders and fire escape ropes. While this part of the scene is enacted, the life net has been placed in position. Frenzied people jump from the fire escapes into the net from every floor. As one man jumps for the net from the roof, an explosion is heard, and the roof falls in. All this time, the engines have been pumping water into the building and upon the flames. The conflagration is gotten under control, and all lives have been saved. Altogether, 4,000 people are employed in this scene. Excuse me while I channel my inner yokel and say, well, goldang! Over the next 2 years, thousands of Coney Island park goers watched the Fighting the Flames show, consistently making it one of Dreamland's biggest attractions. And yet, by the 1906 season, it was gone. Why? To make room for an even more sensational disaster than a burning building, the San Francisco earthquake. After all, thousands of people had died there. An earthquake must be a sure, pardon the pun, fire moneymaker. But although Dreamland was done with fighting the flames were not quite done with Dreamland. Cue the ominous music. Hey, thank you for watching. I'd love it if you could hit the subscribe button and the like button and the comment button, maybe even the little bell. All those things help this channel with the YouTube algorithm, and perhaps even more importantly, they make me feel good about doing this. If you loved this episode, check out my Patreon over at patreon.com/TyBannerman, where you can help me keep this project going. The more folks who join me over there, the more of my time I can devote to this project, which means more episodes, more often. And as always, thank you for meeting me in Dreamland.